Okay, ladies and gentlemen, friend of the show that you probably already recognize, Ryan Grimm, a man that needs no introduction at this point, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief of the Intercept, host of the incredibly successful Deconstructed podcast. Ryan is here with us. Ryan, how long do I have you? Are you done with the rest of your media obligations, or?
No, I'm going on Rising at 11:15, and then I can come back on later if I'm still awake.
We're excited to have you for as long as you will be here. So, Ryan, let's get started. What's going on? I mean, this is crazy. This is madness. Who could have ever predicted all of this? The Hispanic voter turnout being low. I mean, that's crazy. What do you think about everything that you've seen so far tonight?
Yeah, I mean the left, spent this general election being a tremendous team player. Not criticizing Biden for the most part. You had the Sunrise Movement and AOC and others, and join these. What do they call them? Like these unity committees where they put together white papers for Biden to read about climate and energy and race and policing and putting forward the idea that this is going to be a coalition that's going to work together, in order to defeat Trump. And that element of the left was genuinely invested in the idea of defeating Trump, and frankly, to me, as they should have been. So they kind of were quiet about a lot of criticisms that they otherwise might have been making, but you could find those elsewhere. The same criticisms that you saw leveled at Biden during the campaign, that he doesn't have any organizing capacity, that he doesn't have any he didn't have any plan to try to actively increase his share of the vote, whereas Trump had this kind of massive army that people said, well, maybe it's a fake army, but he was saying, well, at least he's trying.
But Ryan, not to cut you off, but you're failing to recognize a key factor here. Even if Biden loses, he lost with grace. What that means is he followed the rules like a good boy, and he didn't do door knocking, and he didn't actually have an organized effort to get out the vote early on, and that's because of COVID, of course. Like, I mean, to be fair, that does put him in a unique situation. If you're literally crying about COVID all the time, which is understandable, and saying like, that's my main thing, I'm gonna be better at COVID, and then you don't follow the restrictions that you yourself claim you're going to implement, then that makes you look bad. Also, then you have a bunch of Democrats that are also understandably afraid of COVID. So that's certainly an issue, but I don't know, use some back channels or something. Like, I don't know, get people to go out and still do some door knocking, find some other more creative ways of doing outreach, specifically in, of course, communities that they consistently take for granted, i.e. the black vote and also the Hispanic vote, as we are seeing that those are communities where Donald Trump did not stop picking up points in, and that has manifested itself in truly unique ways. Now, of course, on the other hand, you have the white vote, as we predicted, with the majority age 65 plus vote, which is these guys are big voters. They are definite voters, and they have moved approximately, according to the New York Times numbers right now, and then I'm looking at 1.5 points in the Democrat direction. That's pretty big. White, fewer college graduate votes on 0.5 points in the Democratic direction. But the Obama-Trump flips have not really panned out too well for the Democrats, whereas Republicans are crushing it with majority Hispanic neighborhoods, 12 plus points. Cuban neighborhoods, 14 plus. Now, that's a lot of that is guided, of course, by the Miami situation. That's going to probably level itself out a little bit as we get to Arizona and Texas. What do you think? Is this looking good? Like, what do you think about the Midwest still? Has anything changed? Has anything surprised you so far tonight?
Well, so I mean, Biden still has a couple of different shots at getting to 270. So Arizona's looking pretty good. Now things have been starting out in every state looking good, because Democrats moved so heavily toward the early vote that the often sometimes the first votes that come out of the early vote, and that if that's the case in Arizona, it's going to be dialed back. but he has a strong lead there. If he holds Minnesota and then flips Michigan and Wisconsin, he doesn't need Pennsylvania or North Carolina or Ohio, and he can still win as long as he wins in Omaha, because that has that one electoral college, and that's looking pretty good. The big question over the last 4 years was Trump going to be able to energize and galvanize more white working class voters than he had brought out last time. And this is something I've talked about a lot, that there's this myth out there that if everybody voted across all of these states, that would be necessarily good for Democrats. But particularly in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and Minnesota to a lesser degree, there are so many eligible white working class voters who just don't vote, that if you goose turnout to a certain level, it actually becomes more favorable to Republicans in those areas. And so then the question was, could Biden flip enough suburban Republican voters or unaffiliated voters into Democrats to counteract what Trump was doing? Because Trump has been doing the mirror kind of political and campaign strategy that the left has always called for, to organize your base and then deliver material gains for your base, follow through on those promises, and you will expand that base in the next election. That's always been the left's theory, that they haven't really gotten to put into practice much, unless you count Reconstruction or the New Deal. But that's basically what Trump tried to do, to say, forget the rest of the country. I'm just going to drive out new voters, and he's doing that. And so the question is whether he's doing that to a sufficient degree to counteract what that strategy produces on the other side, which is anger at you and flips people in the middle away.
Are there any areas that you've been surprised by so far tonight? I mean, of course, most people will say, no, I knew everything ahead of time.
Right.
But I mean, did you even think that there was remotely a shot for Georgia or Florida? I mean, the only part of Florida that I was surprised by is definitely Miami-Dade County. The turnout was incredible there, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
And it was incredible in favor of Donald Trump, of course. That was, when I first saw it, I thought it was a fluke. But
yeah, no, I always tell myself that Florida is just a red state that's kind of disguising itself as a purple state. But then as each election gets closer, I'm like, well, maybe actually it is a swing state. And if you didn't have the unique nature of Miami, if Miami was a city like any other city in the U.S., Florida would be a fairly comfortably Democratic state. So I was a little bit surprised at that. Georgia is. Have they called Georgia? I know Atlanta said they had a water pipe burst, and so they had they're delayed in their vote counting. So I think because of the heavy concentration of suburban voters in Georgia, still feel like that's. Or I felt going in that was a possibility. If it's been called, then I was wrong. I still feel like that's one that they could win.
Oh, so you think Georgia? You think Georgia still could turn it around?
I feel like it was. The New York Times is saying forget about it, right?
Yeah, but the New York Times has also apparently had some errors in calculations. Georgia hasn't been called, but the New York Times saying 95% likelihood that Georgia will go red. But the issue there is the needle is saying Georgia is +2 Trump and 79% leaning towards Donald Trump. But I haven't seen any updates as to any qualifiers or any updates as to like why it looks that way. It looks like Fulton County is only showing 37%, whereas Douglas is at 90 and Cobb County is at 54%. These are relatively low. And when you have Democrat counties showing lower numbers, when you have like Hall County with 98%, like deep red districts showing 98% of the vote. For those of you who are unaware, like most of the population lives in these certain areas. That's the way that they draw out these districts on purpose. So when you see blue, that blue is not adjusted. Like land is not what's voting. What's voting is the people. So when you see blue, know that there are probably hundreds of thousands of more people in that area. So that's why despite the fact that everything looks red on the map. If you see a county like Fulton County only reporting 37, well, look at the disparity there. I mean, it's 75% voting for Joe Biden, only 23% voting for Donald Trump. There's hundreds of thousands of votes that's weighted correctly. There's hundreds of thousands of votes that Fulton County could still have. Donald Trump is leading by 400,000 or nearly 380,000 votes there in the state of Georgia.
If we're going to say where we were being surprised, I thought that Democrats would be putting up a slightly stronger showing in the Senate. Cal Cunningham, that was the dude who got caught with the sex and the potential other affairs and got kicked out of his wife's house like 2 weeks before the election. He was polling ahead by like 10 points. He's now trailing, by about 70,000 votes, and they need, that's an important Democratic pickup for them that they're a
Absolutely.
bit short on right now. Maine is far too early to say. Colorado has flipped. Arizona looks like it's going to flip. Mark Kelly is up there by about 240,000 votes and like 11 points. So Mark Kelly's probably going to knock out Martha McSally. But of course, Doug Jones got smoked in Alabama.
Can I just stop you there for really quickly? While we're on the subject of Arizona, Maricopa County is looking really good in comparison to Clinton numbers, with 54%, with 800,000 votes for Joe Biden and 650,000 votes for Donald Trump. So that's obviously huge. And if Mark Kelly's resounding victory so far, or if Mark Kelly's votes are any indication, it does seem like Arizona's gonna be blue. I mean, not to get too excited yet, but I don't know if there's a lot of like split ticket voting there, or if people are doing the classic like, well, I'm a lifelong Republican, but I think Mark Kelly's a better choice for the Senate. I don't know what's going on there. If that's like
Biden's up there as well. Biden's up by more than 200,000. He's up by 8 points in Arizona as well. So it's more straight ticket partisan, right? And it shows, Arizona, as Aida Chavez wrote a good piece today about how if you actually organize a community toward a goal and accomplish it, that can actually create a political constituency for you. And the effort to kick out Sheriff Joe Arpaio from Maricopa County was a long running battle that gave both like white liberals and also Hispanic organizers there a coalition that they have now put into turning the entire state blue. But Democrats don't do that around the country. They don't organize constituencies toward objectives. And so that's why you see the erosion elsewhere.
Why do you think that we didn't see a similar blue wave among Latino turnout in Texas and specific counties, specifically around western border towns? Is there a particular reason for that, you think? I never thought that Texas would turn blue, but do you think that it's suppression? What do you think the reason is?
I think it's part of this kind of secular shift that's going on, where you're seeing this gender gap play out in the party, and a gender gap and a college education gap. Like those are the lines around which the parties are being divided. And if you're a woman with a college degree, you're extremely likely to be a Democrat at this point. If you're a man with a college degree, you're probably going to be a Democrat. If you're a male person of color with a college degree, very likely to be one. White man with a college degree, now that's about 50-50 Democrat Republican. So then on the Republican side, you're seeing Republicans make gains among black men and Latino men without a college degree, nowhere near the levels that they win white men without a college degree. But you can see the trend moving in that direction. And identity groups are always shifting, in and out of parties, in pursuit of their political interests. And if Democrats don't find a way to kind of re-energize those voters, they can't just count on their ethnicity or their race determining their vote. And that looks to be what happened in those counties you talked about in Texas.
Look
And
at
also, colleges are getting wiped out across the country because of this pandemic. So if you're organizing your coalition around college education in a country where colleges are getting destroyed and colleges becoming increasingly impossible for people to go to because of the student loans and tuition costs, then you're setting yourself up on a suicide path.
By the way, 10 minutes ago, Roy Cooper, the Democrat, did win re-election in North Carolina. What do you think about? I mean, that doesn't really say much because I mean there are plenty of blue governors in red states and red governors in blue states. It's something that that most voters don't really pay too much attention to party loyalty on. Um, I don't know if that actually helps Cal Cunningham's chances, and it doesn't look like it really is, or Joe Biden's chances for that matter. But North Carolina is reporting 93% of the 93% of the votes at this stage, and it is a tight race. It's a really tight race with like 60,000 votes, with Donald Trump leading by literally like 59,000 votes right now, according to the New York Times.
It's still North Carolina is still leaning towards Tillis and leaning towards Trump at this point, but that certainly helps.
I'll just ask you the question that is on everyone's minds. Do you think that the Rust Belt holds as the new blue guard again? Does it turn back? Does it turn blue again with the rural votes, with the white college educated coming back to the Democratic Party, the independents swinging in favor of Joe Biden rather than the way that they broke down for Donald Trump in 2016?
I think if they do hold the Rust Belt this time around, it might largely be two things, a reaction against Trump, two related things, a reaction against Trump that really fueled this transition in this evolution in the suburbs. Depending on what Democrats do with that coalition, that might be the last gasp of a realigning area that is becoming gradually more Republican as then Democrats do even better in, if Arizona is probably going to be solidly blue 4 years from now, and Texas will be much closer to blue, or if not, it'll be much swingier as the cranes keep throwing up more and more corporate headquarters and more developments, bring in more Democratic voters into that state. And so, if you continue to see sprawl in these states that is anchored by decent professional jobs for these upper middle class college educated people, then the Rust Belt stays Democratic, as long as Democrats continue with this particular coalition. But they probably end up focusing more on Texas, which has, if you lock Texas up as a Democrat, you combine that with California and New York, and you basically put the country away until there's a new realignment.
People are like, just ask him who's gonna win. Who do you think is gonna win, Ryan? Tell us. Remember when I ask you all the time, when I used to ask you every single time you came on, point me to a pathway to victory for Donald Trump? Now I'm asking you, Ryan, the exact opposite. Point me to a pathway for victory for Joe Biden, please.
All right. Well, the path to victory for Biden is the 2018 midterms. We talk about that as a blue wave.
Yeah.
And the results that are coming in tonight are kind of mapping with the results that we saw in 2018. What I've heard is that California is going to release as many as 13 million votes tonight, which will mean that Biden at the end of the night will have a significant popular vote lead, which matters for public opinion and the media narrative, and it undercuts Trump's ability to try to declare victory. I've been watching Fox a lot, and Fox is not at all giddy. They're not popping champagne. I think that they seem excited that it's closer than they thought it was going to be, but they're not out here doing a bunch of I told you so's and victory laps. And they have an extraordinarily sophisticated and competent election forecasting and election analysis division, and from everything I've heard, those are people that have real integrity. And so the fact that Fox is not celebrating right now is I think significant.
Yeah, even the Trump campaign itself is just saying, like, look, they released internal communications earlier today, like maybe an hour ago, where they were like, "We're doing really well, like a lot better than we thought we would be doing at this point in the night in Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina." So it's obvious that their internal numbers didn't even show a different reality than what we've been looking at for the past month or so. Yes, the race got tight, a little bit tighter. And ultimately, it did go in the exact opposite direction of what a lot of people like Nate Silver were claiming. Perhaps, I guess, too confidently, if I do say so myself. But, it seems like even the Trump's internal numbers didn't show that, didn't reflect that. And now they are also surprised by it. It still doesn't mean anything. Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina obviously don't mean anything when I feel like personally, this race is coming down to Arizona, specifically Maricopa County, but then also Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I do think that Wisconsin and Michigan are going to turn blue again. That those are going to be the like Democratic safe haven because of the white votes specifically that Joe Biden will be able to win back. Same with Arizona as well, with an actual constituency of Never Trump supporters who did actually love John McCain and despise Donald Trump. And I think that's part of the reason why you see Mark Kelly doing well. And I don't know. You can tell me if my assessment is incorrect, but outside of that, there's not going to be any like confusion there. It's all up to technically Pennsylvania at this stage.
Not necessarily, because if you think that Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are going Biden, and he's going to win it, and Biden's going to win Arizona, then that's it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There is also the 269.
Oh, shoot. I got to go.
Oh, you got to go? Okay.
I'll holler back again.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for coming on, Ryan.
All
Sorry.
Right,
all right. Bye. Okay. That was Ryan Grimm, and he's getting a Skype call so he can go on another show.